The Lost Love. Many years have passed, and I am no longer young. My hair is white, and my body feels tired, but I can still see her in my mind. Her name was Mary. She was the most beautiful girl I had ever seen. I was only 18 when I met her, and she was 16. I loved her with all my heart. I remember the first time I saw her. It was a sunny day in the village. She was sitting by the river reading a book. Her hair was long and brown, and her eyes shined like stars. I walked over to her and said, "Hello." She smiled at me, and my heart beat faster. We became friends. We would talk every day after school. I told her about my dreams and my hopes. She listened to me, and I listened to her. She told me about her family and her life. We shared everything. But I was too shy to tell her how I felt. One day, I finally told her that I loved her. I took a deep breath and said, "Mary, I love you." She looked at me for a moment. Then she shook her head. "I don't love you like that," she said. "You are my friend, but that's all." My heart broke. I felt like the world had fallen apart. But I didn't show her how much it hurt. I just smiled and said, "It's okay. We can still be friends." But after that day, things were never the same. I couldn't stop thinking about her. I saw her every day, but it felt like she was far away. I never forgot her, even though she never loved me back. Years passed, and I grew older. I never married. I couldn't. No one could ever take Mary's place. She was the one I loved, and she always would be. Sometimes, when I'm alone, I think of her. I wonder where she is now. Does she remember me? Does she ever think of me? I don't know. But I will always love her, and she will always be in my heart. Years passed, and I moved to the city. I found a job and I lived alone. I thought maybe it would help me forget Mary, but it didn't. Every day I thought of her. I missed the way she smiled. I missed her voice. I missed her laugh. I would walk through the streets and see young couples holding hands. They looked so happy together. It made me feel sad. I thought, why couldn't I be with her? Why couldn't she love me? One evening, many years later, I went back to the village. It had changed a lot. New houses were built, and the old places were gone. But I went to the river where I had first seen Mary. I sat there, looking at the water. I remembered the first time we talked. I remembered how happy we were. Suddenly I heard a voice. "Are you all right?" I turned around and saw a woman standing there. She was older now, but I knew it was her. It was Mary. I was shocked. I stood up quickly and said, "Mary, is that really you?" She smiled at me. "Yes, it is." "I didn't know you would come back here." We sat down by the river and talked. She told me about her life. She had married someone else and had children. She was happy. But there was something in her eyes that told me she had some sadness too. I asked her, "Do you ever think of me?" She looked down at the ground for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, sometimes. I wonder what would have happened if I had loved you back." My heart felt heavy. I wanted to tell her that I never stopped loving her, but I didn't. I just said, "It's okay, Mary. I just wanted to see you again." She smiled and said, "I'm glad you came. It's good to see you." As I walked away that day, I felt the same sadness I'd felt so many years ago. I knew I would never forget her. She was always in my heart. And now, after all these years, I'd finally seen her again. But it was too late. I returned to the city, and life went on. But I always remembered her. Mary, the girl I loved, would never be forgotten. She would always be the one who got away. Time passed, and I grew older. I worked hard every day, but no matter how busy I was, Mary never left my mind. I still thought about her often. I still remembered her smile and the way she would laugh when we were young. It was a memory that never faded. I never married. I never wanted to. I couldn't imagine loving anyone else. Some people would say, "You should move on, find someone new." But they didn't understand. They didn't know what it was like to love someone so much. Someone who could never love you back. One day, I met a woman at work. Her name was Sarah. She was kind and beautiful, and she liked me. We started talking, and she smiled at me. I could see that she cared about me. I thought, maybe I should give it a try. Maybe I can love her. But every time I looked at her, I saw Mary's face. I couldn't stop thinking about Mary. Sarah could tell something was wrong. She asked me, "Why do you look so sad? Is there something you're not telling me?" I couldn't lie to her. I said, "I loved someone a long time ago, but she never loved me back, and I can't forget her." Sarah looked at me with understanding. It's hard to forget someone you loved so much, but maybe it's time to let go. I tried to let go of Mary, but it was too hard. My heart was still with her. I could never forget her. One night, I went to bed and thought about everything that had happened. I thought about Mary, about the time we spent together. I thought about how she had never loved me. And I realized something. Could never move on. Mary would always be a part of me. Even though she was not with me, she had shaped my life. She had taught me what it meant to love. But she had also taught me that sometimes love is not enough. Sometimes, no matter how much you care about someone, they may never feel the same way. And so I lived my life carrying her memory in my heart. I never stopped loving her, and I never will. She was my lost love. the one that got away. Years passed, and my life continued. I grew older, and the world around me changed. I still lived in the same small town. Everything felt the same, but it also felt different. I would see young people walking down the street, laughing and smiling, full of hope for the future. I would see couples holding hands, and it would make my heart ache. I still thought about Mary every day. Every morning when I woke up, I would remember her smile. Every night before I fell asleep, I would think about the times we shared. I often wondered what she was doing, where she was. Was she happy? Did she ever think about me? One day I decided to visit the old park where we used to meet. It had been many years, but I still remembered every corner of it. I walked through the path where we had sat together, where we had laughed and talked for hours. I sat on the same bench we used to sit on. It was quiet, just like it had always been. I closed my eyes and imagined her there, beside me. I imagined that she was still young and beautiful. I imagined that she had never left. But when I opened my eyes, she was gone. The park was empty, and the world was still. I sat there for a long, long time, thinking. I realized that I had been holding on to something that wasn't there anymore. I had been holding on to a memory of a love that could never be, and I wondered if it was time to let go. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't forget her. She had been my first love, and for a long time I thought she would be my last. But life doesn't always work out the way we plan. Sometimes love doesn't work out. Sometimes the person you love will never love you back. And yet, Mary's memory stayed with me. She was the love of my life. Even if we could never be together, I knew that I would carry her in my heart forever. As I walked away from the park that day, I realized something. It was okay to remember her. It was okay to still love her. I didn't need to forget her to move on. I just needed to accept that sometimes love is not enough, and sometimes you have to learn to live with the sadness, to carry it with you, and to keep moving forward. Mary would always be my lost love, and I would never stop missing her. As the years continued to pass, I grew older. My hair turned grey, and my steps became slower. The world around me changed even more. People moved in and out of town. New families came, and old faces disappeared. Yet, no matter how much time went by, Mary's memory never left me. One cold winter evening, I sat by the fire, watching the flames dance in the hearth. The warmth of the fire was a small comfort on a night so cold. The house was quiet, and I thought about the years that had passed. I thought about the times when I was young, when everything seemed possible, and Mary was there, laughing beside me. I had seen her only once since we were young. It was a few years ago. She was walking down the street, her hair grey like mine. I had stopped and stared at her, but she didn't see me. She was walking with her family, a man and children. I had watched them walk away, feeling a pain in my chest. I wanted to call out to her, to say something, but I couldn't. I wasn't sure if she even remembered me. But in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. Mary had lived her life, and I had lived mine. She had found a family, children, and love. She had moved on, and I hadn't. It was a bitter truth, but it was the truth. I wondered if she ever thought about me. If she ever wondered what had happened to the boy who had loved her so deeply. But even if she didn't, I understood. Life goes on, people change, hearts heal, and time moves forward, whether we are ready for it or not. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the snow falling softly outside. The night was still, peaceful, and I felt the weight of all the years in my heart. I had loved once, and that love had shaped my life in ways I could never explain. But I also knew that life was more than love. It was about living, learning and growing. It was about finding joy in the small moments, even when the past was heavy. It was about accepting the pain and moving forward with hope, even if that hope was a little faded. I didn't regret loving Mary. I didn't regret the time we spent together. I didn't regret the heartache that followed. All of it had made me who I was, and though I would never forget her, I knew it was time to let her go. As I sat down again by the fire, I closed my eyes. For the first time in many years, I felt at peace. Mary would always be in my heart, but I knew I could live without her. I had to. Life had moved on, and so would I.